never gives up. He's always there, fighting for freedom over land and air.
Reaction, living underground, jutsu action, it's a shell of a town.
You think you know cartoons, bright colors, goofy villains, and simple stories that wrap up neatly in 22 minutes. But buried inside some of the most iconic shows and movies from our childhood are plot twists that completely flipped the script. These weren't just tiny surprises. These were the kind of moments that made kids' jaws drop, left parents confused, and in some cases, completely traumatized an entire generation. Today we're diving deep into the top 10 cartoon plot twists nobody saw coming. And trust me, by the time we're done, this will change how you see these cartoons forever. Before we dive in, if you want to relive these twists for yourself, I dropped a link at the very top of the description where you can grab the original shows and movies on DVD. It's the best way to go back and see the moments that shocked us all over again. And if you enjoy deep dives like this and want to help keep this channel growing, don't forget you can hit that super thanks button right below this video. It really goes a long way in supporting the work that goes into these breakdowns. Let's start with one of the most haunting reveals in cartoon history, one that fans didn't even fully appreciate until years later.
Wow, neat!
Give me a break.
I don't like this!
For years, kids tuned into the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon every Saturday morning, holding their breath to see if the young heroes would finally find a way back home. The entire premise of the show was built around that simple question: would these kids ever escape the realm? But what most fans didn't realize at the time was that the show had been slowly planting the seeds for something much, much bigger. The greatest twist of the series wasn't just about the portal home. It was about the villain at the heart of the story, the evil sorcerer Venger, and the jaw-dropping reveal that he is actually the son of Dungeon Master. This was a twist absolutely nobody saw coming. Dungeon Master, the wise, cryptic guide who always appeared with riddle-like advice, was supposed to be their protector, their mentor, their safety net in a world full of monsters and magic. To learn that his own flesh and blood was the greatest threat they faced turned the entire series on its head. Suddenly, the battle wasn't just about light versus darkness. It was about a broken family torn apart by mistakes, curses, and tragedy. For kids growing up in the 80s, this was a level of storytelling that went far beyond simple sword fights and monster battles, and the emotional weight of this revelation was massive. Venger wasn't just a generic Saturday morning villain anymore. He became something far more complex, a fallen child, corrupted and cursed, living as proof of his father's failure. That one reveal made him both terrifying and sympathetic at the same time. Imagine being a kid who thought cartoons were supposed to be fun escapism, only to realize you were actually watching a story about family trauma, redemption, and the scars parents pass on to their children. That was unheard of at the time. The twist showed kids that not everything was as simple as good and evil. It blurred the lines, added layers of depth, and proved that even a show designed to sell toys could deliver emotional gut punches worthy of a Shakespearean tragedy. And as shocking as this was, Dungeons and Dragons wasn't the only cartoon to use family ties to completely shake up its story. Another series would push the idea of betrayal even further, a betrayal that felt more personal, more devastating, and so unforgettable that fans still talk about it decades later.
Match for me as a pitiful human.
Demona.
Who are you to interfere with? You!
When Gargoyles hit TV in the mid-90s, most kids expected another safe action cartoon with monsters and heroes battling it out. What they got instead was something so much deeper, a gothic Shakespearean drama disguised as a cartoon. The show wasn't afraid to dive into mythology, betrayal, politics, and even tragedy. And at the very heart of that darkness was Demona. Demona wasn't just another villain of the week. She was one of the original Gargoyles, a character who once fought side by side with Goliath and the clan. For young viewers, that meant she wasn't some distant enemy. She was family, which made her ultimate betrayal hit even harder. When Demona turned her back on her clan and allied herself with the manipulative Xanatos, it wasn't just shocking, it was devastating. She wasn't tricked or forced. She chose to embrace her bitterness and anger, plotting against the very beings who once trusted her. What made this twist so powerful is how it blurred the lines of good and evil. Demona wasn't crackling like Skeletor or throwing cartoonish tantrums like Cobra Commander. She was hurt, broken, and consumed by centuries of resentment. To kids, this was almost unthinkable. Cartoons were supposed to show you that villains were bad just because. But Gargoyles revealed that sometimes the people closest to you could become the ones who cut the deepest. And this wasn't just a one-off betrayal. Demona doubled down on her choices, becoming a recurring antagonist who was both tragic and terrifying. Kids who thought they were just watching a cool monster show were suddenly thrown into a story about loyalty, loss, and the heartbreaking reality that sometimes the ones that you love are the ones who betray you the most. But betrayal didn't always come from allies. Sometimes it came from the unthinkable, the loss of a hero you thought would always be there, and no show delivered that gut punch harder than X-Men. In the early 90s, when X-Men the animated series premiered, fans were hyped to see their favorite superheroes finally in action. The show had a slick intro, bold characters, and an edge that set it apart from other Saturday morning cartoons. But no one was prepared for what the writers pulled off in the very first storyline. Morph, the fun-loving, wisecracking member of the team, seemed like he was set up to be comic relief, the kind of character who would lighten up the mood when things got too heavy. And then, out of nowhere, he was killed during the very first mission. Kids couldn't believe it. This wasn't the kind of cartoon where the heroes lost for a moment and only to bounce back in the next episode. Morph's death was treated as real, painful, and permanent, at least for a while. The aftermath made it even heavier. Wolverine, usually the tough guy who never showed emotion, was haunted by Morph's death. He carried that grief into multiple episodes, snapping at teammates and struggling to move forward. For kids used to Scooby-Doo antics and G.I. Joe battles where nobody ever really got hurt, seeing a superhero actually die and watching the other heroes grieve was shocking on a level they'd never experienced before. The death of Morph set the tone for the entire series. It let viewers know that X-Men wasn't afraid to get dark, risks, and to tell stories with real emotional stakes. And while Morph eventually came back later in a twisted, broken form, the damage had already been done. Fans had already felt the heartbreak of losing a hero they just started to love. And if that wasn't enough, just a few years earlier, another iconic franchise had delivered one of the most infamous cartoon deaths of all time. A death so big, so brutal, that it traumatized an entire generation. And it all happened in theaters when one of the most beloved Transformers fell in battle. It's the summer of 1986. Kids everywhere are lined up in theaters, popcorn in hand, buzzing with excitement to see their favorite Autobots on the big screen. Transformers had already become a cultural juggernaut, and for most kids, Optimus Prime wasn't just a leader. He was a hero, a role model, even a father figure. He was strength, morality, and stability all rolled into one. So when the movie opened with an all-out war that ended at Optimus Prime's shocking death, it wasn't just surprising, it was devastating. This wasn't the kind of fake-out death where the hero is gone for an episode before bouncing back. Optimus Prime died on screen, slowly fading away in one of the most emotional sequences ever put into animation at the time. Kids in the audience weren't prepared. They screamed, they cried, some even had to be carried out of theaters by their parents. Hasbro, the toy company behind Transformers, had made the cold business decision to kill off Prime just so they could introduce a new line of toys like Hot Rod and Ultra Magnus. To them, Optimus was a piece of merchandise that had run its course. But to millions of children, he was so much more. The backlash was immediate. Parents flooded Hasbro with angry letters. Some children were so upset they swore off Transformers altogether. The decision was so controversial that when the G.I. Joe movie came out shortly afterward, the studio actually rewrote a major death scene. Duke was originally supposed to die, but after seeing the Optimus backlash, they changed it at the last second to have him recover in a coma. Optimus Prime's death literally changed how studios handled character deaths in cartoons. This single twist burned itself into the memories of an entire generation of kids. Even decades later, grown adults still talk about the moment they first watched their hero die. And while Optimus would eventually be resurrected due to fan pressure, nothing could undo the shock of that first death. It was a brutal reminder that sometimes even heroes fall. But if you thought Optimus Prime's death was shocking, another Hasbro property went in an even stranger direction. Instead of killing a hero, they pulled back the mask on one of the most infamous villains of all time and revealed something nobody could have possibly expected.
Yo, Joe! He'll fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe is there.
For years, Cobra Commander was the face of evil in the G.I. Joe universe. He was the cackling, scheming villain whose masked face became instantly recognizable to kids everywhere. Sure, he was dramatic and over the top, but he was also strangely lovable as the archetypal Saturday morning bad guy. And then, the 1987's G.I. Joe the movie came along and completely flipped the script. The film revealed that Cobra Commander wasn't just some random terrorist mastermind. He was actually the product of a bizarre, ancient civilization known as Cobra La. And when the truth came out, it wasn't triumphant, it was horrifying. His body began to mutate, his face twisted into something grotesque, and he was reduced from an iconic villain to a slithering snake-like creature. Kids expecting another fun battle between Joes and Cobras were suddenly watching body horror straight out of a sci-fi nightmare. This wasn't just a plot twist, it was a complete rebranding of a character that kids thought they knew. Cobra Commander went from being the brains of the operation to a tragic, disfigured pawn of an ancient alien society. For many fans, it felt like the rug had been pulled out from under them. Some were fascinated by the darker, more mythic take, and others were flat out disgusted, confused, or even angry. This wasn't the Cobra Commander they'd grown up with. The backlash was so strong that Hasbro quietly pulled Cobra Law to the side in later years, practically pretending it never happened. The reveal of Cobra Commander's true origin remains one of the strangest, most polarizing twists in cartoon history. For some, it was a shocking and unforgettable shakeup. For others, it was a plot twist they wish they could erase from memory. But either way, it proved one thing. Cartoons weren't afraid to take risks that nobody saw coming. And speaking of this, the next series didn't just change a character, it changed the very nature of its hero, leaving kids questioning everything they thought they knew about what it meant to be a leader.
We are now one.
Reboot already stood out in the 90s as the first fully computer animated cartoon. Kids were mesmerized by its sleek CGI look, but behind the shiny graphics was a story that kept getting darker and more complex with every season. And the biggest shock of all came when Bob, the brave guardian of Mainframe, was corrupted and transformed into Glitch Bob. Up to this point, Bob was the anchor of the show, calm, confident, and always ready to protect the system. He was the kind of hero kids could count on. But then, in the chaos of the web, he merged with his key tool, Glitch, and came back different. He wasn't the same Bob anymore. His new form was jagged, unstable, and unpredictable. He even looked alien. His once smooth, reassuring design warped into something that felt more fragile and broken. For kids watching, it was unsettling. Heroes were supposed to level up with cooler powers, not lose part of themselves in the process. This wasn't a triumphant transformation. It was a cautionary tale about sacrifice and survival. Glitch Bob had new abilities, sure, but he wasn't fully in control. He wasn't the leader the Mainframe citizens once knew, and that left everyone, including the audience, wondering if he was even the same person at all. Suddenly, the story wasn't about stopping viruses and winning games. It was about identity, corruption, and whether or not your hero could hold on to who he was when the world kept tearing him apart. For kids who just wanted to see fun computer adventures, this was a twist that shook them. It proved that Reboot wasn't just another gimmicky CGI cartoon. It was a show willing to break its own characters in ways that felt raw and human. And just when audiences thought cartoons couldn't possibly get more real than this, another series stepped up and ripped the rug out from under everyone. Not with a sci-fi twist, but with something terrifyingly grounded in the real world.
It's all over.
Not the way I hear it.
Coach, I've got AIDS.
Wrong. You're HIV positive. Big difference.
Captain Planet was known for being preachy, sure, but nobody expected it to hit viewers with the raw reality of HIV. In the episode of Formula for Hate, a character is revealed to be HIV positive, and the show tackled the subject head on. There was no metaphor, no sci-fi twist. It was straight up after-school special tucked into a Saturday morning cartoon. This was the kind of plot twist that parents weren't ready for. Kids expected to see villains like Luton Plunder or Hoggus Greedley, not the devastating reality of an incurable virus. For many young viewers, this was their first ever exposure to the very concept of HIV/AIDS, and it left a mark. But not every twist was about tragedy or social issues. Some of the biggest shocks came from long-hidden family secrets that tied directly into the heroes themselves. For decades, Skeletor was simply the cackling villain with a skull for a face, but deeper lore revealed that he was once Keldor, the half-brother of King Randor, making him He-Man's uncle. That means the epic battle of good versus evil was really a family feud all along. This revelation blew the minds of fans who thought He-Man's world was straightforward. It suddenly added tragic weight to Skeletor's quest for power. He wasn't just evil, he was a fallen relative, consumed by jealousy and ambition. For kids, this was the first taste of Shakespearean drama disguised in a toy commercial. And speaking of Shakespearean drama, this next twist showed us that even the most innocent characters can be hiding something far darker.
I can see that, fool! I'm diverting auxiliary power to the portal!
For many kids, Krang was just a goofy pink brain in a robot body. But the truth about his backstory was much darker. Krang wasn't just a random villain. He came from Dimension X, a warlord stripped of his power and cast out. Suddenly, the weird brain monster had a past rooted in betrayal, conquest, and exile. This twist changed the way fans saw him. No longer just comic relief, Krang became a tragic figure, a fallen conqueror desperate to regain control. It added layers of horror and sci-fi depth to what many thought was just a silly Saturday morning cartoon. But as dark as that was, the final twist on this list was the one that shook kids and parents worldwide. A betrayal that didn't just scar characters on screen, it scarred every child in the audience.
Lunga vita al re.
Okay, imagine this. It's 1994. Kids everywhere begged their parents to take them to see The Lion King, expecting a fun Disney adventure with songs and laughs. But halfway through the movie, they were blindsided by one of the darkest moments in animation history. Scar betrays his own brother Mufasa, sending him plummeting to his death in front of his son. This wasn't some background tragedy, it was a visceral, emotional gut punch. The betrayal was brutal, the grief was raw, and the image of Simba crying over his father's body burned into the memories of millions. No one saw it coming, and no one forgot it. And that's the beauty and the danger of these plot twists. They weren't just surprises, they were moments that changed the way we saw cartoons forever. So there you have it. 10 plot twists from cartoons that nobody saw coming. From betrayals and family secrets to shocking deaths and grotesque origins, these moments weren't just about shock value. They were about showing us, even as kids, that stories could be complex, emotional, and unforgettable. Which of these twists hit you hardest growing up? Did Optimus Prime's death destroy you? Did Scar's betrayal break your heart? Or did Venger's secret in Dungeons of Dragons blow your mind years later when you finally found out? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I want to hear which cartoon plot twist left the biggest scar on your childhood. And if you thought these were wild, just wait until you see what I have lined up next. There are even darker, stranger, and more disturbing cartoon secrets out there, and you won't believe what's still hiding in plain sight. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell because the next video might just ruin your childhood all over again. See you next time.